Hello, friends. Happy Tuesday to you. And if you're joining me on the replay, happy replay to you as well. We are live today. I'm excited to welcome you to today's live level up conversation.
Welcome to Level Up with Winnie Sun.
Hello, friends. I'm Winnie, your host, Forbes contributor, CNBC council member, and award-winning financial pro here to keep you on top of relevant, trending business news. And of course, what's most important is that you are part of today's discussion. So I'm going to be sharing audience feedback throughout the show. So thanks so much for joining me and welcome back from the week. Now, today I'm going to tell you we have a very, very special guest joining us. We've invited her to start her own segment here with Level Up. You're going to be seeing her more regularly, probably at least once a month on a lot of important topics. I think you're really going to enjoy her. She's been a familiar friend to this show in the past, but now we're going to get her here on a more regular basis. So we're in for a treat. But let's start with the market, let you know how that closed. The Dow closed down 87 points. NASDAQ closed down 40 points. The S&P 500 also down 15. Now, this might come to some surprise if you were watching the markets earlier today, because after the deep drops yesterday, in fact, the market was actually relatively positive. But unfortunately, news trickled in and it wasn't good news. And that certainly sent the market down pretty quickly, too. Because consumer prices last month unfortunately increased yet again. Inflation once again surging, now up to 8.5% from a year ago. That was reported as of March. Now, of course, that's slightly higher than expected, but if you've been watching the news and hearing, you know the Biden administration has been warning us. In fact, yesterday we did hear them saying that CPI numbers should be expected to be poor. They don't know how long this will last. Hopefully, some of the mitigation efforts that they're doing in terms of increasing interest rates and the Fed being very proactive in sort of correcting or handling inflation will come to fruition, that it'll start to get a little bit better. But we haven't seen inflation rates at these levels, my friends, since 1981. And for those of you who perhaps remember what happened in 1981, I think we would agree we don't want that to come back anytime soon. Historically, inflation is around 3 to 4%. Certainly, we are much higher levels than that. Currently, gas, shelter, and food prices are the largest contributors to the monthly gains in the inflation levels. And I'm sure you would agree, for many of us, gas, shelter, and food make up the biggest also portions of our monthly budget. So this is certainly not good news. Gas, in fact, rose over 18% in March. Here in California, I think it actually went up even higher than that. But they're saying that this spike is, of course, temporary. We do know what's happening in the Ukraine war with Russia. That continues to put a lot of pressure on crude oil prices as well. In fact, AAA actually did say, this was shared on CNBC today, that, certainly the price of gas has gone up, but they're saying there's actually just been a bit of a decrease just recently, about 25 cents a gallon. So we'll see. I don't know if you've seen that yet, but here in Southern California, it just feels like it's not really going much lower. We've been over $5 a gallon for way too long. So what do we do about the pandemic? And not only about the pandemic, but what do we do about pandemic inflation, right? Because let's be honest, a lot of this really started and actually just got even more elevated because of the pandemic, because people weren't able to go back to work so quickly, because of supply chains issues, because of so many other issues. So here's some things I want to share with you. Now, there's quite a few other things that you should do. I'm going to be putting together some of my notes, and I'm going to be sharing an article out in Forbes relatively soon. But I'm also going to create some video. I'm doing some seminars for a lot of corporations on this topic for their employees, so they're really smart about how to navigate inflation and retirement planning during this time. But I'm going to give you 2 tips right now. The first thing I would suggest we do is definitely don't panic. Don't be concerned. but do prepare. Preparation is key. Now, historically, modest inflation is here to stay, but it is something that, as an investor, as someone who's actively invested for your future, you got to accept some levels of inflation. Of course, this is sky high, so it's a little different. But whatever you do, make sure, and this is my second tip, make sure that your emergency fund is ready. Now, what do we mean by that, right? 3 to 6 months of living expenses here. That doesn't mean it has to stay in cash completely, because as we know, every dollar that you have in cash right now is tremendously underperforming inflation, right? By more than almost 7% here. So there's definitely things that you want to do, but I would also suggest considering selling some things that you have in taxable accounts if you're able to fund more tax sheltered accounts. Now is absolutely the time, especially since we're about a week away from tax filing. If you haven't made those contributions to your retirement accounts for 2021, I might be talking to you. Maybe you're here listening. There's still time to do that. There's still time to do that. So maybe something to consider. Now, a whole bunch of other points that I have prepared. I see Vicky here. I see Joshua. I see CrossX Fighter. I see Rishi. Thank you so much for joining us. Got a whole bunch of other tips, putting together seminars as we speak. So definitely, if you don't already, make sure you link up with me, send me a message. And if your company is looking for someone to talk about financial literacy, since it's especially now, because April is Financial Literacy Month, definitely reach out because I would love to talk to you. But today we have a very special segment. And for those of you who are regulars to our show, I think you're going to be excited to hear about this. This is something that I'm really, really, really excited to hear. She's someone very special to me, a good friend, and just a powerhouse. Sharon Smith-Akinsanya is someone that you are familiar with. She's CEO of the Mackenzie Group, RMG, founder of Black C-Suite, and Boldly Sharon. She's just an incredible force. She's going to have a special segment now on Level Up Live, and that's going to be called the Sharon segment. Now, that name could change, so I would love to see if those of you have other ideas of what we should call Sharon's segment. Definitely let me know. Sharon, how are you today?
Winnie, I'm doing fine. Thank you so much. I'm so excited about our new segment and partnership together. This is so exciting. Thank you for having me.
Oh my goodness, I am so honored to have you. And I think it's the perfect time. We've got to have these discussions. But, I know, Sharon, off the air, you and I have had some really meaningful discussions. And I know this is something that I want to say we both feel very strongly and passionately about, and the importance of celebrating our differences, right? That differences are valuable. And those are some of the gifts that we can share with one another. And coming together. And so I feel like this is the time, Sharon. We got to talk about this. I know you are an award-winning diversity coach, equity inclusion powerhouse. You work with so many corporate executives, a who's who of the Fortune 500s, award-winning author, and you're just amazing, Sharon.
Oh, you can make me blush, Winnie. Thank you.
But I love it. And so I'm so glad we can kick off now the Sharon segment, or actually, remember, for those of you watching, I would love to hear other names that you think that we should call Sharon's segment. We're very open to that. Vicky, we see you here. Vicky, yes. Thank you so much for being here. If you have ideas when you're hearing her speak, definitely put them in comments. Don't be shy. We got to talk about KBG. Okay,
absolutely.
Because this is a big deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ketanji Brown Jackson, the first Black woman on the Supreme Court. How did you feel about this?
I was screaming. I was screaming right with everybody in the chamber. I was just so elated. You knew it was inevitable. You knew it would happen, but it was something about it when you heard Vice President Kamala Harris said, and she is confirmed. It was just something about that moment when it was just so real. And excuse me, and I was just wondering, what must it feel like to just be there? And then I watched her, Justice Brown watching with, President Biden, and they were holding hands and hugging. It was a special moment that I soaked in. I was screaming with my 81-year-old mom. It was amazing. The first Black Supreme Court justice sitting on the bench is incredible. And it is something that all Americans should be proud of that moment that America came together to really, make a big change at the highest levels of our government.
Sharon, when I heard or I read the news actually, and I thought immediately I got to ask Sharon about this, because did you expect in your lifetime to see this?
I had been hopeful, but because of the last 4 years, it was a little scary, with how things were going at the Supreme Court. But I was hopeful, but when on the campaign, Joe Biden made that promise, and so I was hopeful that he would have the opportunity to keep his promise to appoint the first Black woman to the Supreme Court. So while it was squishy, I was hopeful that he kept his promise. And he did exactly that.
So he kept his promise.
He did.
He sure did. And it was squishy.
It was a little squishy.
It was a little squishy.
It was a little squishy. It's like, okay, Jim Clyburn had to, sort of push him a little bit, but it got done.
It got done. And sometimes it takes a little squish to get things done, right, Sharon?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, a lot of things have happened. And, I did watch some of the hearing, and I'm sure you did as well.
I did.
I would love to hear your reaction on this. Were you surprised by people's reactions? Maybe both positive and negative. What do you think?
Well, Winnie, here's the thing. I always think about people's mamas. I mean, some of those people act like they were raised by wolves. I mean, we're talking about, where was the home training? You would think that, I mean, if I was some of those people's parents, if they weren't here, I'd be rolling in my grave, or I'd be so embarrassed. I'd be hiding my face from the television with the way some of those senators were treating a more than qualified, justice. And I just thought about how were they raised? What an embarrassment to your family. What about your children? What are you teaching your grandchildren about respect and decorum? Whatever happened to we can disagree, but we don't have to be disagreeable and rude. I thought it was outrageous, particularly for many of the justices, Winnie, who had already voted to confirm her before, just, a little over a year ago. Excuse me, you guys, I have a little bit of a cold. And so it was a little bit, well, it was a lot disappointing, but I was so excited at how Ketanji Brown Jackson held her cool. She handled those questions like a pro. She showed the nation what a professional looks like, sounds like, acts like, responds like. Oh, yeah. She understood that once again, as a Black woman, she had to be twice as good, and she could not respond the way Justice Kavanaugh did at his hearing, if we do remember. Mm-hmm. And so she understood that she needed to keep it classy, and she did exactly that. But I do wonder about some of these senators' parents. What were they teaching them when they were growing up? What were they talking about at the dinner tables? Are we that divided that we forgot what our mama taught us? I thought it was embarrassing to them. Not to the nation, but to them as individuals carrying on in that sort of way. But she showed them exactly how you're supposed to act as a professional when you're being interviewed for the highest court in the land.
The highest court in the land. I mean, and we got to talk about this, Sharon. I mean, I loved seeing her family. Can we talk about her family for a second? Like the pride that her daughter showed and her husband showed. There was like so much love there. It was pretty special.
It was so much love, so much pride, and you also knew that they had to sort of, tighten up a little bit because, when you love someone, you don't want to see them hurt. You don't want to see them disrespected or embarrassed. But they were so beautiful and so caring and so loving. You can see it in their eyes. And I just loved it. I love the, the pictures. I love the hugs and, when all of it happened and so it was just really a proud moment to see for this nation that we will have a Black woman on the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court is starting to look a little bit more representative of America.
Yeah, this is really interesting, Sharon. It'll be really interesting to see her role in the Supreme Court and how, I think it'll be interesting to see how cases are decided in the future, right?
Yeah.
I think this is going to be fascinating. But let's talk about this, like creating change. I know
Yeah.
you've talked about this before. We've talked about creating change. Um, Ketanji now becoming Supreme Court justice, the right step, right? Justice Brown, the right step in the right direction.
Right.
What do you think we go from here? What growth are you hoping to see?
Well, I'm hoping to see Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson elbow her way in, because the Supreme Court is still a bit lopsided with regard to 6-3. And so what I'm hoping is that even in her dissents or in her wins, that we hear her voice, that we know that she thought about the least of these. One of the things that's very exciting about Justice Brown's background is that she was a public defender, and that she understands that everyone in this nation has a right to a fair trial and to be defended, no matter how much money they have in this country. So my hope is that we're gonna hear that and feel that we're gonna be more equitable, even if we don't win every case. It'll be about the voice, the seat at the table, the thinking, the writing that we'll be able to read about for the rest of our lives. Her voice will be heard. So, but I do think that this will influence, because anytime that you're that close, but when we think about proximity, when she's that close to the other justices, and there's some powerful women, when I think about Justice Sotomayor, right?
Mhm.
She's, she ain't no slouch. So you can see that they'll be in the room together, duking it out, figuring out how to make this work and influence, one side or the other. I think it's going to be fascinating and powerful. And it is going to inspire other parts of our nation to move the needle forward faster as it pertains to equity and promoting and advancing professionals of color.
Yes. Vicky Garvey's joining us from Facebook Live, and she said we all need voice, which changes lives of people. And it's so true, Vicky. And thank you so much for sharing that. We see Robin Stevens also joining us from LinkedIn Live. It is wonderful to be here with you. We see another friend on LinkedIn saying that I watched her get appointed is a great moment for women and people of color. Thank you so much for your words. I think that's really powerful. And I think that's so true. I think, let me ask you this, Sharon. You work with corporate executives on a day to day, right?
I do.
And a lot of great people, we should say, that who really want to make a difference for their companies, for their employees. They really want to embrace inclusion.
They do.
Have you had conversations with them about this historical moment? And do they ask you questions? Have you had discussions?
Yes.
What are you hearing?
Yes, we have conversations not only with the CEOs, but those members of the C-suite, and I'm friends with them. So we do have, offline conversations and casual conversations. And one of the things that we talked about is the importance, Winnie, of just deciding. You see, President Biden decided that the Supreme Court would change and that he was going to appoint its first African American. And then it happened. When CEOs and other leaders decide that they're going to have more people of color in their C-suite, or as a CEO or in leadership position, when they do that, it will happen. And so the conversations we've been happening is that just decide, when you do that and you're committed to your commitment, it will happen. And so I've just asked them to just do that. The same thing with some changes that have happened recently in the NFL. Somebody decided that there needed to be a Black offensive coach on every NFL team. So then it will be. So when we just decide to make change, change will happen. It really isn't that complicated. If leaders and those with the power to make the decisions to make change, make the change.
So, Sharon, do you think it's going to be necessary that you have basically one person of every color, every orientation on different boards, on different committees, on the Supreme Court? Like, does it take that many people? Does it need to be one of each different type of person for this to work?
Yeah, not necessarily. It would be great, right, if we had representation of every, corner of our world. But no, when you think about the fact that Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson is there, along with Justice Sotomayor, and you know that they're going to be thinking about all of us. It's about the character of the person. You know that they're going to be billboards and ambassadors for all of us. So it's really about who, right? So it makes sense that we have a Black woman on the Supreme Court and a Latino woman on the Supreme Court. And it just makes sense. But yes, it would be awesome if we had a Native American and, Asian Americans. Yeah, it'd be awesome. But there's only 9 of them. So we have to make some decisions, and we have to trust that those of color, those of us of color, who are in leadership positions, whether it's the Supreme Court or a CEO, that they have the character to make sure that we all have a seat at the table through their voice. So yeah, it'd be great, but it's not realistic.
It's not realistic. Thank you, Sharon. That's awesome. Well, I'm so glad that we are now doing this segment. I'm so glad to get your perspective. And I think it always is interesting to hear from you, Sharon, your take on the news. I certainly was very excited to see that. And I'm happy to hear that your mom enjoyed that, because I know you and I have had conversations about how incredible your mom is, as well as your daughter is. So
Thank you.
always happy to hear this. But for those of you who are tuning in and you heard the news, I'm curious to see how you felt and how that impacted you. And if you're just feeling a little bit more optimistic or pessimistic, either way, as we move forward. Of course, thank you so much for tuning in. This was a very special day. A lot of things happening. Certainly, we wish inflation would be going away a little bit sooner, but unfortunately, it doesn't look like it will be. But join me tomorrow. I know, Sharon, it is always a treat to have you. And for those of you who are around, definitely join me tomorrow. I'm going to be on today's show very early tomorrow morning. Hopefully you'll get a chance to see me. Going to be talking about inflation and all things retirement planning. So hopefully you'll get a chance to see that as well. And thank you so much again, Sharon, for being here. Thank you. And also for all of you for watching, supporting our program. Please take a moment to share Sharon and share the show with someone that you care about. And thank you so much for all your comments. Robin Stevens, thank you so much. We adore you. All people need to have hope to feel empowered. Absolutely. Yes. And as a reminder, you can now find full episodes of Level Up on NASDAQ, the KBCW, Amazon Fire, Roku, and many other places. So we're excited to share that Yes Factor brand new podcast is now also on the LinkedIn Podcast Network and can be found anywhere that you tune in. So definitely check out the episode that we had with Sharon's very, very special one. Be well, and I can't wait to see you again tomorrow. But Sharon, we can't wait to see you on a future episode as well. Now, regular segment.
Yay! Thank you, Winnie, for having me. You know what? What about Sharon's take? You guys tell us what you think about Sharon's take.
Sharon's take. What do you guys think? Joshua, I see you still there. Let me know what you think. All right. All right. Take care. We'll see you guys very soon.
Bye-bye.